Shane Stacks on the radio.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
Shall we play a game?
Why, yes. I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Getting geeky in Little Rock, it's Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for joining and tuning in. Today we're going to be talking about something that I love a lot. It's combining two of my favorite things, which is RPGs and comic books. We're going to be talking specifically today about a way to play an RPG without being at the table. And I know that's on a lot of people's minds right now, you know, with the shelter in place, social distancing, self-quarantining, all that's going on. People are looking for ways to play their games without being physically together, and a lot of people are using virtual tabletops like, you know, Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds, and there's nothing wrong with those. I myself have played a couple of times during the pandemic just on Google Hangouts. Just everybody gets on Google Hangouts and plays, and it's worked fine. But there's a tried and true, time-tested method of playing games that used to be called play-by-mail or play-by-post. And you can do the same thing now on email. And I've been, for several months now, close to a year, I've been part of a very rich Villains and Vigilantes campaign that's done completely by email. So we're going to be talking with Tom Heiss, who runs that, and who is also a big fan of Villains and Vigilantes, which is that game is so near and dear to my heart. I think I've had 2 or 3 shows with the creators, Jeff D and Jack Herman, just on this show. I mean, I love Villains and Vigilantes so much. But anyway, I just want to thank you again for tuning in, whether you're listening on 101.1 FM, The Answer, in the Little Rock, Central Arkansas area, or on 101.1 FM, theanswer.com, the live stream anywhere in the world. Or if you're listening after the fact by podcast or on YouTube or Krypton Radio, just thanks so much for tuning in. And with no further ado, we're gonna dig in there with Tom. So Tom, welcome to Shane Plays Geek Talk.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate you making the time. You know, it's an interesting time right now. So I'm hoping that what we talk about can benefit people now, give them some food for thought. And then, you know, maybe people will find the show down the road, you know, when we're on the other side of this pandemic, which I firmly believe we'll be on the other side of it. And soon it'll just be sort of a memory of stuff we wish we hadn't have had to deal with. I want to ask you, how long, and we'll get more into the details later in the show on how you do it, because I think you do it rather excellently. How you do the play by email. It's much richer than I expected when you first told me about it. I said, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And it's very rich. It's a very rich experience. But how long have you been doing this RPGs by email thing?
This will be the 10th year anniversary of my running the Game Master for my Megalopolis campaign environment.
Okay. And that's just Megalopolis. Megalopolis is just a big superheroes everywhere, 4-color comic book world, you know, where I would say
think like Astro Cities.
Yeah, you said Astro City?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like Astro City. It feels to me a lot like the comics of the 80s or the 70s. You know, it's got that fun, bombastic, you know, just 4-color, let's go punch the bad guys. But it's also got, I can just tell with a lot of the things that you mentioned, you'll say, you know, if you refer back to issue whatever 5 years ago, I mean, it's got a lot of history to it. There's been a lot going on. And how many players are in your campaign right now?
Currently we have 5 players.
5 players. So that would be me and 4 others. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So, and you and I met at North Texas RPG Con last year, which I feel like North Texas isn't going to happen this year, but we'll see. You know, that when I went to North Texas, I said, I don't ever want to miss another year. So, you know, we'll see what happens. It's a wonderful con. I mention it on this show a lot.
I was looking forward to seeing you in person again.
Yeah.
We'll see if it's going to be virtual this year or not.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Yeah, it sounds like it's going to move forward in some fashion, but whether it's actually at the hotel, we'll have to see. We actually got to play in a game that was run by Manda, who is the partner of Jeff D., who is the, one of the co-creators and of course famous artist. He did a lot of the original D&D art, and, he did all that wonderful art for V&V. I cherish that art that he did. But anyway, so Villains Vigilantes, I don't think it was the very first superhero RPG, but it was one of the first. And it was actually, as I've shared with people on this show before, and with Jeff and Jack, and Villains and Vigilantes bit me much harder sooner than D&D did. I was a V&V nut before I was a D&D player, really. So I don't know, how did you come to Villains and Vigilantes?
I had friends expose me to D&D in high school, played it, but it really didn't hook me. And then I was at a comic book shop, and so I was over there looking at the game thing, and Villains and Vigilantes was sitting next to the Champions.
Oh, yeah.
And two things got me was Jeff D's art and looking at the character sheet. I could, in 3 minutes, visualize the character and what they could do and have ideas with them on a V&V character sheet, where it'd take me 15 minutes of Champions, reading all the nuances to say, oh, this guy's a speedster, or this guy can do a shockwave attack, where it was quite obvious in the V&V shot immediately that's what he could do. Right.
Well, there was V&V Champions. I'm not down on Champions. There's people that love Champions. In fact, there's a podcast out there called Save for Half, and they cover old school games and modern games inspired by them. And they did a really good breakdown on Champions. So if people aren't familiar with Champions, go listen to that. But Champions also has a reputation for being, I guess, complex. But there's people who, they love it like I love Villains Vigilantes and like you love Villains Vigilantes. And they were both basically superhero RPGs in that wonderful decade of the 80s, because 80s was such a wonderful decade for comic books. So you said that you encountered it in a comic book shop. So, I'm guessing at the time you were a big comic book fan, or are you still a comic book nerd? Like, what's your current relationship with comic books?
I still read them. I do the graphic novel collection. And again, it's really going back to the 80s or the style of the 80s. Because again, I've got the whole run of Astro City, which has got that same 80s feel.
Astro City is amazing. I'd love to have Kurt Busiek on the show. I tweet every now and then, and I'll tag him, and he'll usually like it or respond and say thank you or something. But Astro City is the most human stories in comics. It's got this coat of paint of fun superheroes, but the stories are just so great and so human. So, and I just finished reading the Confessor storyline.
Yeah, that's my go-to read. I reread it about every 2 years. It is just amazing.
Yeah, Astro City's amazing. I missed it when it was really big in the 90s and 2000s, kind of. I knew of it, but I didn't really read it. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I started picking up the Vertigo issues when DC was publishing. And then I've been going back and buying back issues and trade paperbacks and stuff. And it's really good stuff. Really amazing. It's made me appreciate Kurt Busiek more, to where I go back and I've been rereading a lot of his mainstream comics work and coming to appreciate him more and more. Just really good writer.
Avengers were quite good too.
Yeah, no, he's an amazing writer. He's just one of those people. I missed him whenever he was really putting out his main stuff, but going back and reading, I've really been appreciating him. And as long as I'm on the subject, Michael Tierney's Comic Book Shops are a sponsor of the show. So Collector's Edition and the Comic Book Store, here in Arkansas, we're self-quarantining and we're social distancing, but we're not under official shutdown order, mainly because the rate of infection is really far behind projections. So, we've been fortunate that the precautions that we've taken seem to have worked. And so we're not spreading. Our curve is already sort of under control. So there's still shops open, and both the Collector's Edition in North Little Rock and the Comic Book Store in Little Rock are both open. Michael has shut down Mondays, so he's open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 5, both locations. He's not staying open late on Wednesdays for New Comic Book Day because there's no new comic books right now. But he's got a pretty amazing inventory of back issues and other merchandise, so they're still staying open for that. And he says he's been doing gangbusters on eBay because he's got a lot of back issues and stuff. So they've been doing a lot. And this Saturday, April 18th, the day this episode broadcasts on the air, for Saturday only, if you spend at least $20 on one of his shows, you can get a free copy of Stephen King's The Stand, American Nightmares. I think he's being a little tongue-in-cheek there, doing a The Stand giveaway. But Stephen King's The Stand, American Nightmares, hardcover graphic novel, still in the shrink wrap, while supplies last. That's a $25 value. If you spend at least $20, you'll also get that for free. So wanted to mention that on behalf of Mike. A lot of small business owners are having to be very creative out there to try not to close and to, provide salaries for their employees. So anyway, so when you were reading comics back in the day, like what were you reading? What were some of your favorite titles?
I was heavily into X-Men under Claremont and Burns.
Yep.
Then Perez's Marvel, Avengers, and then Burns' Fantastic Four. So it was in the 80s, early 90s. And again, Simonson's version of Thor when that run came through. All of those. I would check out the indies that were just starting to break in the scene. Wasn't like it was today, but that's when the Dragon first came out and Spawn were just starting.
Right. I remember all that. And again, we'll be talking, soon about this play by email campaign that you do. Maybe give people tips on how to do it. But I wanted to just spend a couple of minutes before we did that. What is it about Villains and Vigilantes that you love so much?
For me, it's both the genre as well as the mechanics for it. Like I said, the character sheets just meet my niche for being simple, easy to understand, a lot of free form and variety that you can do versus, again, for Champions, the way it was weighted, it was heavily, have to be restricted and done to go for balancing, whereas Villain Vigilantes, even in the most current edition, still free form and open.
I mean, you've played what? Which version was it that you picked up when you were in the comic book store that time? Do you remember?
It was 2.0. I never saw the original version 1.
I never have either. I've seen pictures.
I've got original one of it in the decades, and Jeff has got a reprint of it when they issued Monkey House Games with it. He may be sold out, but the next time... Oh, well, you know what?
I did buy that. Yeah, I did buy that at the con. Yeah, yes. I did. I forgot I bought that. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. But yeah, I was on 2.0 or whatever. Where on the front, it's got the guy holding the other guy up, and then and then there's the flying guy kind of curving in on the top of that. So you came in on second edition and played that for. I mean, have you played Villains and Vigilantes nonstop all these years, or like what's been your history with the game?
No, I had it, and we played it all through college. And after college, the first couple of years, the group dissolved with different jobs, different locations. And so it was basically a break up until about 15 years ago. Started finding different forums that had D&D, and they would do play-by-forums. And I actually found a play-by-email that someone else was doing. I joined it as a player.
Okay, so you got the idea from another... okay, all right.
Yeah.
So you did play-by-email and play-by-post, or play-by-forum, I mean. Yep.
Yep. And so I did like 2 or 3 years of the play-by-email on this other website. It was called Vanguard. You probably could do a search on Vanguard headquarters and still find his website. Because he did play-by-email with a secondary website posting. Just everyone to go back and look at the records for it. And I got the bug, let me go do the GM so other people could play and expand the community in essence. So that's what led me into working up. And I've spent about a year prepping to get ready. So that way I'd have a good idea of what modules I wanted to use, because it was my first chance to go use all the modules that had been kept on my shelf all the years and work through them.
So It seemed to me when we were at North Texas RPG Con that, I mean, I'm not saying you were best friends or anything like that. I don't know, but it seemed like you had a pretty friendly relationship with Jeff and Manda. So,
yeah, I met them. If I remember how many years before it was, it's like 8 years, because right before they released the 2.1 version, which is the one that has Freedom Eagle fighting with Spider and 2 other guys, they were hitting out the cons for this coming out and just released it. And in Texas at that time, in the North Texas area, we had 2 cons. We had Texacon and we had North Texas RPG one. Well, Texacon, I found out about it, and they were just getting started. And I was so excited about Jeff and them releasing the new one that I said, I'll do GM it, and I'll go run one of the new modules they just published to regain the rights, not knowing they were going to be there. So Jeff and Beth were quite excited to find out that someone was running their modules at the con. So they came over to say hi. And it's like, that look you had in your face when you met them was my first time.
Yeah, I don't fanboy on a lot of people. I really don't. I get to talk to a lot of people that I admire doing this show. I don't fanboy a whole lot, and I fanboy pretty hard around Jeff D. I mean, I just lose it around Jeff D. So
with them, they were going to run some games too, so we rearranged the schedule because everyone wanted to play in theirs as well, to do my 2 games. And then I played in one that Jack did, and the next day, and the last day of the con, Jeff said, let's not run a game, let's do character creation with the new rules that we're coming out with.
That's pretty fun.
So that was fun. And he said, like it was in 3 weeks, we're going to be in North Texas RPG. Y'all come to that and bring your characters. And you did. So I immediately went and signed up and could get into his game. So I showed up with the character I made it then and played in that version because he was running that module there. And I've been seeing him every year with the RPGs. And so we've done that. I think he recognized me a little bit from forum posting because we've been doing forums, but he really didn't know me. It was knowing the RPGs.
Right.
And then when they came out with his GoFundMe and the Kickstarters, I was both, supportive of that and got different things. So it really developed our relationship over RPG, because there'd be times that he didn't have a game. I'd just sit there and talk with him as you got to do.
That was really special just to chat with him just about just whatever, get to know him as a person.
And this was like the first year that Jeff didn't run any games. I mean, you did Amanda's, but for every year Jeff would do at least 1 or 2 Vigilantes. He'd do 1 Caveman or other games he'd been part of. And I always got in them because it's like, I don't care. Other people can do it, but one spot's going to be for me. So I really built that relationship for doing that. That's great.
I noticed when we were at the table, when we were playing in the game that Amanda was running, we were having a big fracas with like Stormbringer 2.0 or Stormbringer's, progeny or whatever. Yeah, and that's Stormlord, not Stormbringer. I just deducted 15 cool points from myself for that. So there's no need for anyone to invoke a tribunal on me. And the beaver, the mighty beaver. Yep. I don't know if you remember that or not, the cryptids. Yep. I noticed that Manda was actually looking to you at times for rules clarifications, so I could tell that, they knew that you knew the game really well and stuff like that. So what I want to do is get us to a break. And when we come back, I want to talk just about the play-by RPG. I want you to give people tips on that, because I think it's we do this. This is just how your campaign goes. But like when the pandemic came along, other than making sure everybody was okay, it didn't really slow anything down. I mean, it's just a really good way. And as I mentioned earlier, when we first started talking, in the show, that it's surprisingly rich. It's much richer than I would have expected. And going in, I expected it to be a very slow, we got to wait on everybody's turns and this and that. But it hasn't been like that at all. And you encapsulate each. Well, we'll talk about some of your style that I like a lot after the break. But I'm going to go ahead and get us to a break. Just want to remind folks that my sponsors, I appreciate them very much. I do have a Patreon. My sponsors help cover the bills, but they don't pay for everything. Radio is a different beast than a podcast. So if you like what you hear, I do have a Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Shane Plays and support that. And even if you can't do that, which is totally fine. I mean, I never say, hey, you got to Patreon the show, or I don't want you listening. I want everybody to listen. But if people like this, if they like Geek Talk Radio, I love the support. But if you can't, contribute by Patreon, which is fine, go to iTunes and leave a review for the podcast. That helps tremendously. So anything, or, go to YouTube and thumbs up, because I put the show on YouTube, thumbs that up, something, maybe spread the word, So, and for those of you out there that are Patreon supporters, I appreciate you very much. By the way, also, speaking of sponsors, which is how I started this segue, so-called segue, my Game Goblins and the comic book store / collector's edition, they're open for business right now for in-store. They have their precautions, they have their social distancing, but they are open. They're limiting people inside and all these other things. I think Game Goblins will even just bring it out to the curb for you. But small businesses, need our support. And I really appreciate my sponsors very much. So if you're a gamer, or if you're a comic book lover, or both, please, you'll hear them here on the ad break. And please support my sponsors. I appreciate them very much. Are you a fan of thrilling adventure, daring suspense, and just a touch of romance? Cursova has you covered. Since 2016, Cursova has been publishing the very best in contemporary fantasy and science fiction, retro pulp, and for you D&D gamers, Appendix N style fiction. Based in Little Rock, you can pick up their flagship magazine locally or at Michael Tierney's The Comic Book Store on Treasure Hill Road, or Collector's Edition on JFK in North Little Rock. Swing by one of Michael's stores and pick up an issue, or find them on Amazon. CIRSOVA, doesn't start with a K, it starts with a C. CIRSOVA, Cursova Magazine. Check them out today. And speaking of Michael Tierney's comic book shops, comic book lovers, head to Michael Tierney's local comic book stores for the newest books on the shelves, plus a fantastic selection of back issues. Visit the Comic Book Store on Treasure Hill Road in Little Rock and Collector's Edition on JFK Boulevard in North Little Rock. And don't forget to click on over to the wildstars.com. Michael Tierney knows comics. In addition to being in business for nearly 4 decades and publishing his own comic book series, The Wild Stars, for almost as long and still going, he has written multiple columns for comics magazines and is an Overstreet Price Guide advisor. Michael is also the author of the wildly successful, high-quality, 4-volume labor of love, The Edgar Rice Burroughs 100-Year Art Chronology. Remember, for all of your comic book needs with friendly service, make sure to visit the Comic Book Store and Treasure Hill Road in Little Rock, Collector's Edition on JFK Boulevard in North Little Rock, and thewildstars.com to learn more. Tell them Shane Plays sent you. And last, but never, ever, ever least, I want to go ahead and throw out some love to Game Goblins. Some goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40k, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at GameGoblins.com. That's 501-224-GAME or GameGoblins.com. Conveniently located 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees, Game Goblins has expanded their store size, and there is plenty of room for exciting inventory and tables for play space. You'll like that space because Game Goblins has gaming events every day of the week. For all of your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your actual purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. First-time customers, mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Tell them Shane Plays sent you. And folks, if you do visit any of my sponsors, please tell them that you hear about them on the show. That helps them know that their advertising money and the relationship we've built is time and money well spent.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane patreon.com/Shane Plays.
Shane Stacks on the radio.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
And we're back on Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I want to throw out some quick show notes before I forget. You can always tweet the show at Shane Plays. That's at Shane Plays, ShanePlays. The show notes and links for today's show, if you're listening to the podcast or Krypton Radio or YouTube version, are up on the blog at shaneplays.com. That's ShanePlays.com. Last week's show is out there, and that was a wonderful show with comic book writer and screenwriter Brian Edward Hill. I really enjoyed talking with Brian, and I hope you enjoy listening as much as I enjoyed talking with him. This show, it is a radio show, but it also goes out after the fact as a podcast at the blog at shaneplays.com, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Podbean, SoundCloud, YouTube, and more. And last, but never ever least, Shane Plays is also carried on Krypton Radio. Krypton Radio is sci-fi for your Wi-Fi. And now, back to the show. I'm talking with my GM for the Villains and Vigilantes play-by-email RPG campaign that I'm in. Been doing it not quite a year now. And Tom does it wonderfully. I love how he does the play-by-email. So I just thought this would be a good topic this week, seeing how people are looking for how can I have some fun, but I'm stuck at home, because we're all staying home to help the cause. I don't mind staying home if it helps somebody not get sick. I'm okay with that. So what Tom did, I met him last June at North Texas RPG Con. We were playing Village of Vigilantes, and he invited me. I think we exchanged emails or so. I can't remember, but you invited me to, hey, do you want to check out my campaign? And I was like, yeah. And really, I was just like, well, I'll check it out because, one, I wanted more opportunities to play Village of Vigilantes. That's another really good use of play by email or play by forum. Go to a website forum. Is a lot of times that's the only way to get a group for a game that isn't like D&D or Pathfinder or Star Wars. When you look at the pie chart of role-playing games, the big 2 or 3 eat up almost everything, and then there's this little bitty sliver that everything else is made up of. So if you have a beloved game that you want to play, sometime, check out, see if there's a play-by-email or a play-by forum. Go to a website forum and play that way. I've played a little bit of D&D that way back in the day. And it grew out of, I'm assuming, they've done this for years and years. I mean, probably 100 years ago, people would mail chess moves to each other or something like that. But in wargaming and, the sort of the gaming community, there's always been this sort of play-by-post where people would post in a gaming specialty magazine, like I'm looking for a player for this war game or whatever, and people would send letters back and forth with their moves. So this play-by-email is just a natural outgrowth of that. Now, so I was like, I'll check this out, but I got to be honest, what I was expecting was, I don't know, one of my cats, my cat's being loud. Why you got to be like that, cat? So, Cat, really? Cat, this isn't... Hold on. Cat. Not a good time. I just got the look of death. So, I used canned air. Well, there she goes. She's going back to it. Hopefully, it won't make too much noise. So, but this RPGs by email is just a natural outgrowth of that. And what I was expecting was this really slow environment where to do one round of combat would take 2 months, right? But I was okay with that. I'm like, it's fine. And plus it'll help me learn these new, because V&V is now on 3.0. Or is it 3.1 now? Something like that? I don't know.
3.0.
3.0.
Still 3.0.
Okay, so, and I was like, I can learn the new rules and, all that. So, but what I was treated to was this wonderful style of play by email where so what Tom will do is once everybody sends in all their moves and what they want to have happen, he collates it all together and does some rolling and this and that and some tweaking, filling in the gaps. And then he'll send out a new quote unquote issue of the campaign. And it looks like a comic book cover at the first page, and it's got art, and it's got like up in the upper left-hand corner the price of the comic, and it looks like a comic book. And the artwork reflects what's happening this turn, if you will. And then as you read through it, he tells you what happened in the result of everybody's input. So he'll send out like roughly every 2 weeks, give or take, right? Is that kind of your goal?
The cadence is I give the players 2 weeks, especially 2 weekends, and then I give myself 2 weekends to get it done. Some issues are quicker, some issues, because in real life, take a little longer, but that's what I try to reach for, is each month you'll get a comic, and it's 2 weeks for your turn, 2 weeks for me to get the turn out into a new comic. So
like an ongoing comic book series, you get an issue roughly in a month, once a month. And it's just really well done. And like I said, you get this comic book cover, like here's this month's issue. And then as you go through it, it'll recap like, well, so-and-so said they wanted this to happen. So here's what happened. And it'll read like prose, not like your character did this, but it'll be like, trying to think of like what's one of the characters, Adamus. So
Adamus, one of the originals.
Right. So, Adamus attacks the whatever and the great evil villain Cyberdoom responds. So it's written like prose. And then in parentheses, there'll be comments like, okay, you said you wanted to do this. So here's how the dice rolls came out and all of that. And you fill a little bit in, like you'll take some, logical extent, like you said you wanted to do this, so here's how I did it. And it's all very smooth. So you get to put your turns in. A couple of, everybody emails their turns in, and sometimes they can respond to what somebody else said by email. It's like, okay, we need this. Like you just sent one out 2 or 3 days ago, I think on the 11th, April 11th, and you said turns are due on the 27th. So it gives everybody plenty of time to read what's going on and respond, and to see what other people are doing and then respond. So you're not just getting one email a month. There's a constant kind of stream of emails going on with one big monthly update going out. And there's little maps inside the issue. You send it out in doc and you send it in PDF. So you can say, so-and-so's doing this, so-and-so's doing that, da-da-da. And then, there's flavor text, NPCs are doing stuff. And it'll be little maps showing, okay, well, your character's here and the bad guy's there and this is there. So, and it all works really well. And at the end of it, you'll give a summary of where everybody's at with like hit points and power points and any statuses that are on them. And then you say, okay, everything's due next. So what I want to know is, how did you develop, and feel free to add anything I left out on how you how did you develop that flow? Because that doesn't just happen overnight. That's a very nice flow.
Right. And so when I first started, again, we're on the 10th anniversary, I was modeling a person named Jeff Jarka, who does Vanguard headquarters, and that's who I played with at time, and I got GM tips from him.
So is his play by forum or play by email very similar rhythm, or?
It was a similar rhythm. His style was a bit different because mine's more to meet my style and my players' style to make their comprehension better. But when I started, it was very close to his. You'll notice I capture all the turns at the very back of the book. So if you ever want to go back and see in that issue, well, what did I submit or what did somebody else? They're all copied in the very back after you get through the end. So I captured all of those. It also helps my editing because that way I get all the emails in one place, and I can cut and paste it into the text above and just do better editing. So it helps me, but it also has a history of what everyone submitted that I used. Again, there's sometimes we have other emails because we've developed relationships over the years with each other from just emailing. Mm-hmm. And so we have little comments there I might not use, but majority of it you'll see in there. In the last issue, we had emails about making sure everyone was doing well during the virus. You won't see those in the back, but again, the turn and the discussions, those are all back there. And so I take that from there. The rest has been, how to make it more of a comic book issue, because that's what people enjoy, the genre. So that's really been a good, strong.
That struck me immediately. I was like, oh, this, we're playing a comic book campaign, and it's like we're in a comic book series. So that was one of the innovations you brought to it, or the making it kind of a comic book, or
that was what Jeff sort of had, because he called it New Issue Day 2.
Okay.
But it didn't look at the appearance, but it had artwork. Mine had artwork at the beginning, so his just started with the text.
Gotcha.
But I did a cover page, because that really looks good in PDF of the files and stuff. And then one of our players, Steve Delves, who's from the UK, actually gave me art with the comic book. Well, I graciously took that apart in Adobe Pro equivalent, and so I've been using that as my model going forward. So I've had different players contribute to my style, too, as I've been working with them. I've had 2 players that have been there since the beginning.
So one's Adamas. And
the other one's Black Orchid, played by that Mark plays.
Okay, so let's give a shout out to everybody real quick that's in the campaign. I'm sure there's been many more players in this over 10 years, but for the active players, because I don't, we didn't get a chance to ask everybody if they were okay using their full name, but maybe their first name and who they play and like kind of what their character's about.
So I've got John, who plays Adamas. He was one of the original ones in this campaign. And he is playing what started off as a Superman album or knockoff, or that kind of term.
Right.
But he's morphed into his own character over playing it for the 10 years as he gained powers, create his own style. So if you're just joining now, unless you read his character sheets, you might not even get that he's started off as a Superman equivalent, because he plays so different in what he does. And then we've got Black Orchid. She is a female PSC played by Mark, and she's the intelligence in there. We have Jamie, who plays Strike Force, and he was in the beginning, but Strike Force wasn't. This is his second. I think it's his second, not his third. So I've got players that have said, I played this character as far as I want to go. I want to play something different that would fit different in the group. So they'll put a character aside and a new one.
And with a superhero team dynamic, that makes it kind of, you've got a built-in way to bring, like new players in. So, Yep.
And then
new characters.
Right. And then we got Steve, who is from plays Dr. Wildman for it. And then we've got you with Patty Plus, and then we've got Chuck, who plays Skink, and then we've got Chris, who started with the Demolisher.
Okay, so the Demolisher's has the big hammer, right?
Yes, he's the one with the hammer.
Yeah, because we're in the middle of fighting a huge giant robot right now, so he's been hammering on its leg, and Adamas has been blowing stuff up in its head. So, and Black Orchid, can turn invisible, and Dr. Wildman, he's kind of like a druid character, right? Or okay.
It is a druid character, yeah.
Okay. And then Skink is kind of like a feral hand-to-hand fighter, kind of, or?
Yeah, he is a reptile character, claws, acrobatics, moving around. So combination, you can think of Spider-Man and Sabretooth, but he's a reptile who is actually called a skink. That was one of the unique things. Going to the zoo with my family, I got to see a skink, and it's like, oh, now I know.
Now you know what a skink is.
Yeah.
And my character is Patty Plus because, and I like this. Okay, a lot of people don't like this, but if you follow the standard way of how Villains and Vigilantes does character creation all the way back to the beginning, you randomly roll your powers for the most part.
Yeah, I love it too.
I love it because it forces you to work with what you got. And I got a very idiosyncratic combination of powers. And I said, this character is weird like a platypus. And then I was like, oh, Patty Plus. So that's kind of what the riff is there. And we even, like, you were helping me come up with a color scheme for her costume, and we went with Perry from Phineas and Ferb. So she's got that kind of blue and orange and all of that. So, because she has a very weird mix of powers, and it just reminded me of a platypus. So, and that was a lot of fun. So, and she's playing sort of not only am I new to being a hero, but I'm new to being around all these established heroes and stuff like that, which is always a fun character to play.
So the fun thing with the new Mighty Protectors is Jeff and them published their universe, and they also declared that they were doing a multiverse, saying go forward and use my verse and make it your own, and that's what we've done.
Right.
So your players are all the next generation of the Crusaders for the new Crusaders.
Right.
And that was a key thing that I learned as a GM to make this really flow well, is to create NPCs to be the GM voice. So right now we're using the Crusaders. You got Man to Man and that cast that are playing there, but they also are my GM voice. So if I need to tell y'all something that is just couldn't pick up, or you should know it in the world, but you don't know it because your reader's not in the world, I can use their voice and tell you it, so it's more seamless and more like comic books instead of me saying, oh, here's the GM, now y'all should know this as well.
Right. No, it is.
Well,
go ahead.
There's also time to insert into the person that they knew this in the text I'm writing, but again, having the NPCs, it makes it easier to be the GM voice. That's another thing I'd recommend for anyone that was trying to do this, is make sure you have NPCs on the team. That way you get to play them a little, but again, if you need to tell them something, you can tell them as a character.
Yeah, it's a good point. That's just a good GM tip all around. But especially for a Village of Vigilantes player, though, that's a thrill. Like, one of the first characters that Patty ran into was Laserfire, who's, all the way back to There's a Crisis at Crusader Citadel back in the 80s, and Man-to-Man's running around and all of that. So that was a lot of fun. So the play by email, if people are wondering, they're like, what does it take for me to really do this right? Obviously they need email. But what do they, like, if somebody came to you and said, I want to start doing RPGs by email, and they said, can you, kind of take me under your wing? Like, what would you tell them the basics are?
I mean, the key thing is making sure you set your deadlines, because it's the email. People can't go back and see it as easily as like a play-by-post, but you have the ability for more players, so you don't have to say, well, I need to get people that are only in my time zone if you're going to try to do some of the online games, because that way you can show at the time, or you have time with time constraint. And
that's another reason that puts into words something I didn't even think to mention, that there may be times where play by email is preferable because of that. You got people with all different schedules. Yep. When I was talking at the beginning of the show about like Fantasy Grounds or Roll20, those are great. But, if you can't get everybody together at the same time, then, play by email works really well.
Well, that's the reason I chose it first. When I started this, my kids were in elementary school. So I could actually do my turns after we got them to bed. So I could do all my husband and father activities. And then after they went to bed, I could spend an hour and a half or an hour just staying up after they're gone to sleep as my downtime doing the game. So I had that flexibility, and the players didn't have to line up that schedule. If they're a morning person and their time is in the morning, they could email it. They could do that. And that also helped with me as the kids got older. It was actually got to a point in high school and middle school, it was better for me to do it in the morning instead of evening. So it gives you that flexibility of your schedules. And right now I enjoy it because I got one player that's in the United Kingdom and another in California. And it doesn't matter for times. They can email me at midnight, and I can just get it when I get in the morning, or they can do it with their schedules. So it gives you that flexibility of getting as many players involved as you want.
So when it comes to like the mechanics, have you always done the dice rolling once people, how have you experimented with letting players do their own dice rolls, or how do you do that?
I've always done the dice rolling myself just because of that timing for it and not worrying about someone sending it in. I don't think it really was a trust thing, but it was just easier because I had all the information. I knew what theirs was from their character sheets, but I know the opponent. So I didn't have to have an email with them saying, I'm going to do this, and say, okay, here's their adjustments, here's your to hit and roll it. I just took care of it. And I have a Word document that I use for the write-ups, and I have an Excel spreadsheet that I have everyone's schedule in there. I have all their dice rolls, and I can just do the Excel and load in their dice rolls and let it do the math for me.
Yeah,
so and that becomes a tracker for when I fill out the forms of what happened.
Well, and it works, like I said, it works really well. You'll always say, like, okay, Patty, or Adamus or Demolisher, you threw a punch at the bad guy. And, regardless of whether you hit or missed or whatever, you'll say, okay, you rolled this, you needed this. And, and if it's a hit, you'll be like, okay, and then you did this much damage, which was compared to armor or whatever. So you always put all the math in there so that, the player knows exactly what happened and why, and can see the dice rolls. So,
when I first started, I left that out.
Yeah.
And I realized I wasn't giving the players enough information to do their next turns. So that was one of the key things for playing this. I would recommend is do GM notes that give them the mechanics, because it's still a game. They still need to make their decisions. And so that helps them than just because I did it straight narrative where it'd be a story. And while I think they enjoyed it, it was hard for them to figure out their next turns because they didn't know why they missed. They didn't know if what they're doing, if they needed to be more, less aggressive, needed to improve their chances of hit, or if they had really high, I can be more aggressive and take more attacks and still have a better chance of hitting. So that's one of the things I've added in the last half decade.
Yeah, I like it.
I've enjoyed and helps through their turn.
And it helps me learn the game system again, because I haven't played. When we played Villains Vigilantes a year ago, that's the first time I played it in, man, I couldn't tell you how long, since I was like 16 or something, So that was a big thrill, but I'd forgotten a lot of how the game worked. So another thing, you were talking about a half decade and a decade and all that. Another resource you have is you have like a website with all of the past issues on it, right? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Cause you'll say you'll mention something and then you'll say, and if that sounds familiar, that character was an issue, whatever, so it's like, when the editor gives a footnote, like, see Amazing Spider-Man number 211 or whatever. So
yeah, and I also started it too to help everyone used to this world. Since I was coming out with a predefined campaign world, having the website there's different sites on there that if they want to go look at what are the different cities that they could be in, and they just don't remember that term, they can go to the website and look at the cities, and I got descriptions for it. Again, a lot of my campaign is modeled around Astro Cities kind of genre, because I liked how that was laid out. I did the same thing. And then I'll put in there a list of all of the other hero NPCs they could see, as well as try to do an update on the villains. So if they wanted to say, well, we fought them a while back, where are they? Then go look and say, oh, if they're incarcerated, or no, they're still at large.
Okay. So look it up.
Yep, and look it up. And I also have all the ex-players' character sheets there. So when we talk about, there's a section of the legends. So if you want to see through the history who else has played and come and gone, I still have the links to their character sheets, so it can take you back in there to see those too. That's
a really good resource. So last question, we're kind of running out of time, but I wanted to ask this. Given the people's different time zones and schedules, setting all that aside, have you noticed that there's a particular type of gamer or personality that is maybe a really good fit or maybe not a good fit for play by email?
Again, I've got the different players. I've got some that they may send me one sentence for a turn because of what's going on in their life. Sometimes I'll hit an issue and all of a sudden I get a lot of prose. So, I mean, for the play by email, it's the untapped guy that wants to be a writer, or a writer for comic books or story, that they can give you a lot of rich details. You can see from some of the inputs that I have a couple of players now that really enjoy writing up stories and history. Mm-hmm. And I've had them in the past, and I would give them free reign to model the campaign world as well. So there's guys that way the world is today is because players wanted to write some different stories. Now, I had some limits on what they could change. but they could definitely have influence and keep it going. Like I was talking about, that there was a new super team. One of the players actually created together out of the environment of the thing, bringing those other NPCs together to create a new team. So those guys can get a lot from it. But again, I've had other people that have played with me for a couple of years that may get 3 sentences, but they still enjoy reading it. They still enjoy contributing. And this lets you work. It doesn't have one guy feeling like they're dominating.
Mm-hmm.
And I can handle both.
Have you had anybody that gave it a shot and was just like, no, this is just not? Because there's going to be people out there like the speed of it, or there's going to be people it's not for them. You know, what kind of feedback have you gotten like that?
Well, I've gotten some that it just took too long, or they didn't get the feel for it, which is fine. The one that's probably the most memorable to me is I brought a new player in, and it's always trying, because it takes, just like we were doing, 2 or 3 emails to even create the character sheet.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives you an idea, and I've had some people just decide that that's not even for them in the character generation. But I had one guy get all the way through it, and he comes in for the first turn, and it's an issue that I've been building up to, and the players all reacted to the NPC and the events that was happening at the moment. And so we had a high volume of emails in the first 5 days where everyone was excited replying. And he just wrote back and said, this is just too much email traffic for me to keep up with. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I wasn't going to argue with him that, hey, it isn't always this bad. You came at the right moment that everyone's just excited.
Yeah, just everybody's excited, right?
Yeah.
Well,
but
yeah.
Just emails so he could respond. It just wasn't for him. And he felt like he had to. I have some people that, in the past, you could tell they didn't read anyone's emails. They just put their turn in. And I would just make sure that I molded the story. So
right. Well, I read everything, and like I missed on the most recent turn that we gave our input, I said, well, I'll assist a character if they want help. If not, I'll do this. And I completely missed that another, in this case, the skink said they were going to run over and basically do the same thing and help it. I completely missed that, and I read it. I tried to keep up with all the emails. So, you need that referee there, like you're being. Well, okay, man, I've really appreciated it. I think this is wonderful. I think that playing this way, it's a good fit for busy people. I'll tell you that. And it's also a good fit for people that the only way, unless I go out and tackle people and say, I really want you to play V&V with me and just really beat the bushes. The only way I'm going to play V&V right now is like this. And I really enjoyed it. It's scratching that itch. And I'm really enjoying it. So you do a wonderful job. You're quite good at it. So,
if the listeners want to see the website, they could search on Megalopolis V&V Blogspot, and they'll bring it up.
Yeah,
I haven't
let me
got
make a note of that right now.
but they can definitely read it, see what my style is, and I plan on trying to get it caught back up during this next week.
Megalopolis.blogspot.com. That leads me to my last question. Well, go ahead.
Again, if they do the search for it, it should come up. But that's not the exact web address, but that usually brings it up at the top of the search piece for it.
Okay. And that leads me to the last question. If anybody hears this and they're like, man, I really want to check that out. I mean, are you open to new players? Or are you maxed? Or how are you? Yeah.
Oh, no, I can open new players. This one game right now is almost maxed. But if you look at the website, I've got different titles. Like right now we're doing the Crusade. I had one that just finished called The Quest. At one time when I first was doing this, I had reached out to one of the several forums. I actually had 3 different comic issues going with player page 3, and I've gone down to this thing because that's how many players I have.
So, and just, if people have joined late, given the nature of radio, in your part, when you say comic book issues, you're saying campaigns. You had 3 campaigns going at the same time.
Yes,
right?
I did.
Okay. Well, Tom, it's been a pleasure, and I thanks so much for your time, and I look forward to playing more of the new Crusaders with Patty Plus as we keep going, and looking forward to getting to know all the other players even more. Had a couple email me privately, or not privately, but just outside of the, like, hey, welcome, and asking me questions about the character and all that, and I've appreciated that. So, all right, I've got to do this, Tom. You may or may not be aware that I always close on the bad joke of the week.
Okay.
So the bad joke of the week is coming. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Did I have you sign the waiver? I can't remember if I had you sign the waiver or not.
I didn't get a waiver.
For mental damages? Okay, well, I just hope you don't have a good lawyer. Okay, what kind of art does Aquaman prefer?
I don't know. What kind of art does Aquaman prefer?
Watercolor. I could tell by the sour. You were laughing, but also sourpussing at the same time. That is the perfect. That's the perfect response. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for being on, and everybody, we'll catch you next time on Shane Plays.
You've got mail.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.